We are oppressed. We are exploited. We are downtrodden. We are denied not only civil rights, but even human rights. So the only way we're going to get some of this oppression and exploitation away from us or aside from us is come together against the common enemy.
Hey there YouTube, Bed Bath & Bongs here again. So yeah, look at all this new evidence concerning the FBI and NYPD's involvement in Malcolm X's death. It's pretty mind-blowing. So yeah, so basically what the story is, Malcolm X, who was murdered by Nation of Islam members on orders of Elijah Muhammad and Louis Farrakhan. His assassination was also aided and abetted by the NYPD and the FBI, who of course were undermining several different civil rights groups. This was all brought to light by the deathbed letter of a NYPD officer that was instrumental in this scheme. So days before Malcolm X's appearance at the Audubon Ballroom, where he was murdered by the Nation of Islam members, definitely Talmage, anyways, So we have the assassination of Malcolm X by Jennifer Rosenberg with ThoughtCo. After spending the year as a hunted After spending a year as a hunted man, Malcolm X was shot and killed during a meeting of the Organization of Afro-American Unity, also known as the OAAU, at the Audubon Ballroom in Harlem, New York on February 21st, 1965. The assailants, at least 3 in number, were members of the black Muslim group, the Nation of Islam, the group with which Malcolm X had been a prominent minister for 10 years before he split with them in March 1964. Exactly who shot Malcolm X had been hotly debated over the decades. One man, Talmage Hire, was arrested at the scene and was definitely a shooter. 2 other men were arrested and sentenced, but were most likely wrongly accused. The confusion over the identity of the shooters compounds the question of why Malcolm X was assassinated and led to a wide range of conspiracy theories. Going over a little biography for him. Malcolm X was born Malcolm Little in 1925. After his father was brutally murdered, his home life unraveled, and he was soon selling drugs and involved in petty crimes. In 1946, 19-year-old Malcolm X was arrested and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Interesting note on his father being murdered, the police at the time ruled it a suicide, even though it was clear that he was beat up and placed on train tracks for the train to run him over. It was prison that Malcolm X learned about the Nation of Islam and began writing daily letters to the leader Elijah Muhammad, known as the Messenger of Allah. Malcolm X, the name he acquired from NOI, was released from prison in 1952. He quickly rose up the ranks of the NOI, becoming the minister of the large temple number 7 in Harlem. For 10 years, Malcolm X remained a prominent, outspoken member of the NOI, creating controversy across the nation with his rhetoric. However, the close ties between Malcolm X and Muhammad began to wither in 1963. Tensions quickly escalated between Malcolm X and Muhammad, with the final rift occurring on December 4, 1963. The entire nation was mourning the recent death of President JFK. Malcolm X probably made the uncouth remark that JFK's death was chickens coming home to roost. In response, Muhammad ordered Malcolm X to be suspended from the NOI for 90 days. After the end of the suspension on March 8, 1964, Malcolm X formally left the NOI. Malcolm X became disillusioned with the NOI, and so after he left, he created his own black Muslim group, the Organization of Afro-American Unity. So in the rest of this, they do cover about, because there is a huge split between him and Elijah Muhammad. And it does talk about how Malcolm X revealed the information of Muhammad's infidelity with 6 of his secretaries, with whom he had illegitimate children. Then, of course, the assassination. On the morning of Sunday, February 21st, 1965, he woke up in his 12th floor hotel room at the Hilton Hotel in New York and headed for the Audubon Ballroom. He parked his blue Oldsmobile nearly 20 blocks away, and when he arrived there, he headed backstage. As soon as he stood up to the stage and stood behind a wooden podium, he gave his traditional Muslim welcome, Assalamu alaikum, and got the response. A ruckus began in the middle of the crowd. A man had stood up, shouting at a man next to him had tried to pickpocket him. Malcolm X's bodyguards left the stage area, the ones that weren't arrested by the police and the FBI, went to the stage area to deal with that situation. That left him unprotected, and as he sidestepped away from the podium, saying, "Let's be cool, brothers," a man stood up near the front of the crowd, pulled out a sawed-up shotgun from beneath his trench coat, and shot at Malcolm X. Made him fall backwards over some chairs, and the man with the shotgun fired again. And then 2 other men rushed the stage, firing a Luger and a .45 automatic pistol, hitting mostly his legs. Between the noise from the shots and the smoke bomb that had been set off, there was all sorts of chaos. Many people tried to escape. The only one who did not manage to escape was Talmadge Tommy Heyer, sometimes called Hagen. He had been shot in the leg by one of the bodyguards. This is from the Washington Post by Sidney Trent. Let's see here. Family members of Malcolm X have revealed a letter written by a New York police officer that they say shows the NYPD and FBI were behind the 1965 assassination of the famed black leader. The 2011 letter by the now-dead officer Raymond A. Wood stated that Wood had been compelled by his supervisors at the NYPD to coax 2 members of Malcolm X's security team into committing crimes, leading to their arrest just a few days before the assassination. They were unable to secure the entry to New York's Audubon Ballroom where Malcolm X had been speaking when he was killed. He maintained in the letters that the arrests were part of a conspiracy by the NYPD and the FBI to murder Malcolm X, who had become disenchanted with the Nation of Islam and left the black separatist group to start his own organization, the Muslim Mosque. I was a black New York City undercover police officer between May of 1964 through May of 1971, Wood's letter began. I participated in actions that in hindsight were deplorable and detrimental to my own black people. Under the direction of my handlers, I was told to encourage leaders and members of the civil rights groups to commit felonious acts. He said he was hired by the NYPD to infiltrate the civil rights groups, to find evidence of criminal activity so the FBI could discredit and arrest its leaders. He said that he threatened to resign, but that his supervisors said if he did, they would charge him with false crimes. His supervisors, Wood said, concocted an alleged plot to bomb the Statue of Liberty, and implicated the members of Malcolm X's security detail that led to their arrests. On the day of the assassination, Wood said, his supervisors were him to be at the Audubon Ballroom, where he was identified by witnesses while leaving the scene. Khalil Islam, also known as Thomas Johnson, was later arrested and wrongfully convicted to protect my cover and the secrets of the FBI and NYPD, he said.
This is about restorative justice to try to have those black leaders, those civil rights activists who were wrongfully convicted over 50 years ago, to have them exonerated.
After Ray's passing, I found a confession letter that Ray had written and mailed to my father back in 2011. This letter details the FBI, and the NYPD's involvement in the assassination of Malcolm X, and how he was forced to betray his people. This letter helps me to understand the pain and guilt that Ray felt for the last 55 years. He conspired to help the NYPD assassinate Malcolm X. On behalf of Ray, he wanted the world to know that he is deeply sorry. I hope that this information helps the Shabazz family, to more clearly understand what happened to their father on that horrible day. As a black man, I am disgusted to know that what happened 60 years ago is still going on today. We are living under J. Edgar Hoover's Jim Crow system of policing our black and brown people. He is the architect of these constant injustices and tactics against our people. I am now going to give a copy of this letter to the Shabazz family. I intend to give a copy of this letter to Khalil Saeed's family, Walter Bowe's family, Thomas Johnson's family, Herb Collander's family, and Afeni Shakur's family. These are the families of individuals that I am aware of who have been falsely convicted due to Ray's actions.
Explosive new information involving the assassination of civil rights activist Malcolm X 50 years ago today. It comes from the family of a former NYPD officer in a letter released after his death. And ABC's Zachary Keish is at the Audubon Ballroom in New York City, where Malcolm X was shot. Zachary, good morning to you.
You know, Malcolm Little, Detroit Red, El Hajj, Malik Al-Shabazz, Dan, you can call him whatever you like. Malcolm X was a fearless black man. It made him a prophet for some and a problem, a threat for others.
We want justice by any means necessary. We want equality by any means necessary.
He spoke truth to power and sought to liberate black Americans, free them from the rot of racism.
Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet?
56 years after Malcolm X was assassinated here in Harlem, new details have emerged. According to this deathbed note penned by a former undercover NYPD officer sent to infiltrate and undermine the man and the movement, the letter says both the FBI and the NYPD were involved.
Under the direction of my handlers, I was told to encourage leaders and members of the civil rights groups to commit felonious acts.
Ray Woods is his name. Lawyers say after carrying the burden of his decisions for decades, the details were placed in the hands of a cousin, Reggie, to be released after his death.
He was a good man that was tricked and forced to betray his own people. And he felt guilt and remorse for that for 56 years.
There have been questions about what happened at the Audubon Ballroom from the beginning. Many have been explored through books and film, most recently in a Netflix documentary.
Because the official count of who killed Malcolm X, it's not true.
Far too many African Americans who have stood up to voice equality and justice in this country have found themselves being persecuted, prosecuted, or in the case of Malcolm X, assassinated.
The NYPD says it has provided all available records relevant to that case to the district attorney. The department remains committed to assist with that review in any way. Civil rights attorney Benjamin Crumb says this is about restorative justice, setting the record straight.
This is the only way we can bridge this divide. We have to have transparency plus accountability, and that's the only way we'll ever get to trust.
The DA's office says they're reviewing the case. We've also reached out to the FBI and have not heard back. Now, today, civil rights leaders are drawing a connection between the past and the present. Today, we honor the life and legacy of Malcolm X, a uniquely American story. Whit?
Fascinating developments in an important and historic case. Zachary Keish for us, thank you so much.
Officer Woods, along with the FBI, framed several members of Malcolm X's security detail in a fake bombing of the Statue of Liberty. So that way they could jam them up and Malcolm X would not be as protected for the assassination attempt. Which is pretty apparent because all they had to do was pretend like somebody was being pickpocketed, bim bam boom, 3 people roll up and just murder the fuck out of them. Yeah. It's pretty gross. And then it's just so telling because there are so many leaders out there that are like Elijah Muhammad, just these spineless pieces of garbage who, instead of, really hating the white man and wanting to give it to the white man, you rather conspire with the white man to kill another black man just to retain your leadership position because you feel threatened. What a little dicked son of a bitch Elijah Muhammad was. May he rot in hell. And you know what? May J. Edgar Hoover rot in hell too. He's a complete... I actually have a video on him as well. He's a complete piece of garbage. But let's watch some videos and smoke. And Bonds, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Have a good night.
In order for you and me to devise some kind of method or strategy to offset some of the events or a repetition of the events that have taken place here in Los Angeles recently, we have to go to the root. We have to go to the cause. Dealing with the condition itself is not enough. And it is because of our effort toward getting straight to the root that people oftentimes think we're dealing in hate. We are oppressed. We are exploited. We are downtrodden. We are denied not only civil rights, but even human rights. So the only way we're going to get some of this oppression and exploitation away from us or aside from us is come together against the common enemy. Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. No, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate? You should ask yourself, who taught you to hate being what God gave you? And I, for one, as a Muslim, believe that the white man is intelligent enough. If he were made to realize how black people really feel and how fed up we are without that old compromise and sweet talk. Stop sweet talking him. Tell him how you feel. Tell him what kind of hell you've been catching, and let him know that if he's not ready to clean his house up, if he's not ready to clean his house up, he shouldn't have a house. It should catch on fire and burn down.